So, a couple of episodes ago, we talked about why it's important to apologize more often. And kind of organically out of that conversation came this idea of how you handle when you don't get an apology that you want. So, we thought that we would talk about the idea of kind of letting go of that need for an apology or even letting go of this need for closure.
Hmm.
So that's what we're going to dig into today.
Hmm. Um, I want to start by asking you because I was thinking about this earlier today. I was on my Peloton bike and I was thinking, when have I needed closure? What's my relationship with it? Because I just wanted to come in with like clarity on that. And I wanted to know where you stood with that. Like, how do you feel about apologies? Can you let go of things easily? Or what relationship do you have about that?
Yeah, I was thinking about it too, and it's such a complex question. I
Hmm.
feel like I don't have a really strong need for closure in a lot of ways. Like, I don't think about, like grudges
Hmm.
or like think back on past relationships and like wish that I could have a conversation with them about something and get that closure. But I do have some instances where I have wanted closure because of a wrong that I did. So, not me
Hmm.
needing something from them, but like I've gone back to people that I hurt years ago and sent them a letter and said, hey, I just wanted to apologize for how I treated you at this point, and, yada, yada. And so that closure is more important for me because it's a wrong that I've done. I don't feel like I have a lot of need for closure for wrongs that other people have done. I think that that's something that I've just I naturally am like, oh well,
Yeah.
I do let things go pretty easily.
So when you've reached out to people, because you feel that you've done a wrong and you feel that you want some kind of closure, does it matter to you if or how they respond, or is it more just you get the closure by taking that action?
I think so. In all cases, the people have responded and accepted the apology, but I think that I would have been okay with them not. It was
Mm-hmm.
really more that I needed them to know
Mm-hmm.
that I knew that I had acted in a way that was not right and that I had harmed
Right.
them. So I almost like gave myself the closure, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
it does, because to me, and tell me if I'm right or wrong, it's more like about your relationship with yourself.
100%.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, it's more like I didn't feel like I didn't behave in a way that aligns with who I think that I am or who I am now or who I want to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it was kind of forgiving myself
Yeah.
for how I behaved in extending that
Mm-hmm.
apology to them.
Yeah. I like that because I think, yeah, if our closure is contingent on someone else giving us their approval, I think that's like the problematic thing about this idea of closure. Because I think so much of it is around our relationship with ourselves.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm similar to you in that sense that I don't really have grudges. And that's not because I'm insensitive. I'm deeply sensitive, so very very much impacted in the moment by
Mm.
the way relationships unfold. If relationships end, if I feel that I've been treated in a way that hurts my feelings, I'll really feel that. I think with time, though, I just sort of see people's actions as theirs, right? And so I don't tend to take things that personally. With time, I'm able to let that go. So I don't really have a lot of grudges I don't have no grudges against any exes, friendships that have, where we've parted ways, or friendships that have soured. That's fine, right? If anything, maybe they're not in my life, but I don't feel anger really. So I think that that's something that I really like about myself,
Yeah.
because I think it helps my baseline of happiness. Like, it helps increase my baseline of happiness, and also helps me feel more peace of mind.
Yeah, I agree. As you're talking, I'm trying to think back to things that did bother me at the
Mm-hmm.
time
Mm-hmm.
and why they don't anymore. And, like in college, my college boyfriend cheated on me with this woman that looked like Sheryl Crow. So for like 8 years, I couldn't listen to Sheryl Crow
All right.
music, because it brought up, and now it's just
It
funny
was
to
it
me.
was triggering for you.
It was very triggering to me. And now it's just
Yeah.
funny, right? I hold no ill
Yeah.
will towards him or her. It's like
Mm-hmm. Or Cheryl
we're all,
Crow.
or Sheryl Crow. Yeah, she's fine
Yeah,
too.
she's fine. Yeah.
Um, but I think like you're right that we can't let other people's actions dictate how we're feeling. Like
Mm-hmm.
we can't hold on to these grudges about something that someone else did. Like you can investigate why you
Mm-hmm.
feel the way that you feel about it and
Mm-hmm.
see if there's anything that you need to do for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But if you get stuck on like this person harmed me and I will never be okay until they repair it, you you're just not going to get anywhere.
I think that that's true because I think that when we want when we say we want closure, and I've said it as well in the past, like I want closure for this didn't work out, or this person hurt me, or this job, I was fired, this desire for closure. There's nothing really that, even if the other person says sorry or explains their perspective, usually we actually know why they did it.
Yeah.
Like we know, it's just that we don't like that answer. So we want to hear something different. And so I think our idea of closure is more not so much that the other person has to say something that's really going to click. It's more like something needs to click within us,
Yeah.
that we decide that consciously we want to let this go. And we're going to find a way to do that. And that might be complex and take different forms depending on what the hurt is, what the situation is. It's not always going to be the same. But I think it's more of an inside job, the closure, versus we can't demand, even if someone apologizes like that. You might appreciate that, but it might not give you the quote unquote closure that you want. I think that has to come from within.
Right. You're looking for an apology or a conversation to make you feel a certain way.
Yes.
And the other person isn't necessarily going to say what you want them to say or make you understand it in the way that you want to understand it. So you
Mm-hmm.
just get in this cycle of like constantly going back to it and repeating it or trying to have the conversation over and over again
Yes.
and never making any progress because they can't give you
Yeah.
what you need internally.
Yeah.
Like you
And
have to make that decision.
yes. And so, what is it that you need internally when you say that you want closure? Some of the things that we might need is like psychological relief if we're suffering, some kind of meaning or understanding. I just want to understand so it can make sense to me. A feeling of control or empowerment, right? Because something's happening outside of our control. We didn't want it to go that way. And we think, well, if I get more information, I might feel more in control. And ultimately, to feel better, to heal, or to grow from it. So those are some of the things that we're seeking typically when we say that we want closure. And I think those are all valid. Like, of course, we want all those things. I guess what I'm questioning is, well, is getting closure, quote unquote, from another person, is it really going to give you any of those? I mean, it might, but it very well might not.
Yeah. The control one is really interesting.
Hmm.
That I think is a huge piece. Like you're trying to analyze this thing went wrong. How do
Yeah.
I stop it from going wrong in the future? Like obviously
Mm.
that's not a conscious decision. People aren't sitting there thinking that, but that is a
Yeah.
big part of it. Is like, how do I stop this so I never feel like this again?
Yeah.
If I get
Yeah.
all the information possible, then I can make sure that I don't do something that causes this in the future, or I don't,
For sure.
make a friend like this. Like you are trying to change the future by analyzing the past.
100%. And I also think sometimes change the present. It's like, oh, if I
Sure.
just find out more, then I can get in there and try to navigate the situation and make it go another way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder if there's also a piece of like, even if rationally if someone else has harmed you or wronged you, there's still a piece of it where you feel like you did something that
Mm-hmm.
either made them do it or allowed them to do it, or, somehow you're at fault.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can get them to apologize and get them to convince you that, you had nothing to do with it, you can like get rid of that guilt
Mm.
that you have, or that fault that you feel like you have in someone else's actions that you actually had no control over.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So the next thing that I want to explore, since I think we both agree that someone else can't always give us the closure that we want,
Yeah.
How can we then create some of that closure that we're seeking when we feel that we need it?
Great.
How do we do it? So to me, I was thinking there's kind of two parts of it. The first is what we love talking about is the mindset work. So some of that inner work, and then I think there are some external, actions you can take as well.
Okay.
So if we start with the internal work, I think the first is just accepting reality. And not accepting like saying that you like it and sugarcoating it, but just accepting that this is actually what is happening and not fight with it. And with that, knowing like our reality won't always be perfect. We're not always going to get what we want. We're not always going to be treated in ways that we would have chosen. And that's true for every human on this planet.
Yeah. I think stoicism kind of plays a big role in this for me, like kind of that acceptance piece of like, it is what it is, and I'm not going to get too worked up about it because I can't change it, and I'd rather focus on the things that I can change, and just kind of having that mindful calm
Yeah.
of that acceptance. And it's like you can accept something without condoning it.
Yes.
Like, yes, this
Yeah.
thing happened and it's not okay, but I'm not going to harm myself anymore than I have to by, I lived through it, and it's fine, and it was wrong, but
Yeah.
I'm okay.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just the reality that like I'm allowed to be me and you're allowed to be you.
Yeah.
And you're not always going to act in a way that I, might have envisioned that I would want it or might have scripted it. I mean, how could you? You're allowed to be you, right? And so part of it is just like accepting that everyone is kind of doing their thing and doing their best. And their actions might end up, inadvertently or advertently hurting you. But they're just like living their life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in a way it's freeing. Like why do we think everybody should be doing things that make us feel good?
Right. And like, are you holding other people up to the same standard and same expectation that you want them to hold you up to? Like, are you getting hurt and harmed and offended by things and then expecting apologies for things that other people are like, what? Like,
Yeah.
like, would you want them to get upset about every time you didn't notice their haircut or like whatever it is? Like,
or didn't call them back or
yeah, like put some perspective in here and think about like how many things do you actually want to get worked up about and require apology for, and have harm what could be really great healthy relationships without that layer of like anger and expectation and just I don't know, I feel like people get worked up about a lot of things where it's like, do you have to?
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I think we have expectations of people that we love, and they might not meet our expectations. And again, I don't think they're always doing something necessarily bad, and it can still hurt us.
Yeah.
Like objective, like what's bad, what's good. I mean, most things, the majority of things, have more than one truth to them. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if I think of one example, a recent example of someone with whom I'm close, was moving through some health challenges, and I really wanted to be there in a specific way for them. And they didn't want me to be there in that way. Like I wanted to, know everything and join in appointments and help, quote unquote, because I thought that was helpful. Well, guess what? They didn't. And I could feel hurt by that,
Yeah.
because I thought, oh, well, this is how I want to show up as a friend. Um, and and this individual has every right to say what they want and need. And that doesn't mean that it's, in the moment it might sting or I might feel disappointment and have all those emotions. But for me to hold a grudge or be angry or want something different, I can't. Like I mean, I can want it, but I can also practice letting it go and just letting that person be that person and letting me be me. I can't force them to want to have the type of engagement that I was looking for in that moment.
Yeah, and I kind of think what you're kind of getting to is intent. Like,
Mm-hmm.
did this person say they don't want me to be around because they dislike me and don't want me around helping them? Or are they saying that's not what I need? Thank
Yeah.
you, but.
Yeah.
And, if someone intentionally harms you, then that's one thing.
Of
But,
course. But
but,
so often, exactly, so often it's not intentional. And we
right.
still feel hurt and feel like we need explanations or we harbor things versus practice because we're sensitive as humans
Yeah.
and we want to belong and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
but if the exactly what you're saying, if the intention isn't to hurt, then why bother holding on to it?
Yeah. So if you can put yourself in the other person's shoes and take their perspective, even if you still disagree with it, or
Mm-hmm.
even if you still feel like it caused you harm, at least if you can have that empathy and that ability to see things from their perspective, then you can maybe create a little bit of a shift in how you're thinking about it. And again, this goes back to stopping your own self-harm, because that's what you're
Mm-hmm.
doing when you get wrapped up in a
Yeah.
grudge or being angry about something that you could let go and that doesn't really require repair or an
Mm-hmm.
apology or something, because the intent wasn't there. You're just injuring yourself over
Yeah.
and over again by continuing to hold on to it.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely, you're just injuring yourself. And there's one like small nuance though that is coming up for me because I agree with you in this, idea of putting yourself in their shoes. But I think part of it is also beyond that. Like even if you don't understand, what would it take to just give them your positive intent and believe that people are doing their best, and even if you don't understand it, think that's
Yeah.
fine. They're just doing their life and I don't need to understand because I think that's part of the closure thing too. It's like a control. Well, if I understand and they have a good enough reason, then I'll let it go. But we might not ever understand. It might not make sense to our brains, but it makes sense to their brains.
Yeah, I
And
love that.
yeah,
I love that you said that people are just doing their best, because that is something that I try and remind myself of
yeah,
is, everyone is really doing their best with the tools and situation that they're in, and like tools they have, the situation they're in, the
yeah.
resources that they've got, the knowledge that they have. Like you have no idea what that person was dealing with up until the point that they said or did whatever
Mm-hmm,
that is
mm-hmm.
bothering you. Like they could have had the worst day and then took it out on you, and that sucks, but it happened, right? So if you can be like, yeah, okay, you know what, they're just doing their best and I don't get it, but it's okay. Because like the other thing that's coming up is like, if it's a pattern, if this person harms you repeatedly, then that's one
Yes,
thing. But if it's like,
a
your
hundred
partner had a
percent.
bad day,
Yeah,
can
yeah,
you give them some grace and like let it go and not rub their nose in it?
yeah.
you know? What
Absolutely. Of course. Yeah, we're not saying just become a doormat.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. So
So,
that's some of the internal work I think we can do.
yeah. Okay, so what can we do externally, like with the
Mhm.
other person, or actual actions that we can take?
Okay. The first thing that's coming to my mind is around self compassion. So this is, I mean, it's an internal process, but it's also a practice, as we talked about. So choosing to be real with yourself about what's going on. And so part of that is processing your emotions. So naming how you feel, like, wow, ouch, I could feel super hurt by this, or I feel super pissed. I feel really disappointed. I feel hurt. Whatever the situation is, just to like name that emotion and allow yourself to feel it as a part of the emotional processing. And then going through the self compassion process, which we talked about in an earlier episode, but around naming your feeling, allowing yourself to process it, reminding yourself that that's part of the human experience, and then sending yourself love and care. So you're doing some of your own healing versus looking to another person to do it for you.
Yeah. And I think a big piece of it for me is it's so easy when you have a strong reaction to something, like you get mad about something, to just stay at that surface level in the emotion, in the anger.
Mm.
And if you can have the mindfulness to stop and be like, why is this making me so angry?
Mm-hmm.
And kind of figure out like what's underneath that. Like maybe I'm just hungry, like
Yeah.
why am I responding so strongly to this? And if it's something that you can pick up that's like a pattern of yours,
Mm-hmm.
like I always get angry when, people leave their cart in the middle of the aisle at the grocery store, like things
Mm-hmm.
like that, whatever it is that
Mm-hmm.
that is your pattern, then you can start to unwind that a little bit for yourself and make your reactions not as significant in the future
Yes.
to these things, like getting that piece of self-understanding. But
Mm-hmm.
more often than not, what I find is when I get really mad about something or like really worked up about something, and then I can take that second to be like, why does this really bother me? By
Mm.
the time I get done thinking about that, I'm like actually laughing at myself
Right.
because I'm like, oh yeah, it's me. Like
Right. Yeah.
I'm the one being ridiculous here. Like they were
Yeah.
just living their lives.
Yeah.
They're just doing what they're doing, and I made this a thing.
You made it be something about you.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Okay. I love that. Yeah. The self reflection piece. And you can do that by just stopping, pausing, taking a breath, reflecting. You could do it by journaling.
Mm-hmm.
Never a bad idea. Right.
Yep.
I read this really cool journaling tip. I think it would work for this too. If you're feeling like overwhelmed with the, feelings and thoughts about something that's happened that you're trying to work out, you write down like 1 to 2 pages, just scribble down everything you can about the situation, everything that's in your brain. And then you pull out the 2 to 3 sentences that are the most true.
Ooh.
It's cool, right?
Yeah. I have another one, which would
Yeah.
be to write the story from the other person's perspective,
Cool.
which I think, yeah, makes you actually have to think about whether they, made the decision to hurt you or
Mm-hmm.
like what was going on in their world when they did whatever they did.
Yeah, I'm like thinking potentially an empathy booster or
Yeah.
potentially an anger booster.
Well,
Depends how you write the story.
yeah, it could be, but I'm thinking,
Yeah.
If I went through that practice and I was really mad about something and I tried to write it from their perspective, even if I was still mad about it, I feel
Mm-hmm.
like having to write out what I think they did,
Yeah.
it would actually kind of put it in perspective, and I'd be like, "Oh, I'm probably being a little hyperbolic here. Like I'm probably putting more
Mm.
intent and more harm into it than is real." Kind of that idea that we've talked about a few times of like putting things to words really
Mm-hmm.
puts them in perspective, and you can start to be like, oh yeah, I think I'm being a little bit too harsh here. Or it can help you see like this is why this hurt me so much, because they
Yeah.
behaved this way. And then it helps you kind of unwind like, okay, now I know what I need in this situation or why it was such a strong feeling.
What I like about that idea that you suggested is that it's such a productive thing to do. Like it's such a, you know what I mean? It's such a like tangible thing that where you're taking another perspective versus just going on loop in your brain about something. You're forcing
Yeah.
yourself to at least try on another perspective for those 5 to 7 minutes that you're writing out the story.
Yep.
from them. So I think it's probably not something that a lot of people do, because often we're really married to our narrative, especially when we're feeling emotional about something. So I think that's a really bold suggestion. I
Cool.
like it.
So what are some other tools that people can try?
Um, I think, and this is something that I do regularly, because if we're upset about something that happened in the past, once we've processed it, we've thought about it, we've worked with our emotions, it's productive to then think about, well, what can I do in the present and the future that will bring me joy or fulfillment? So some type of activity, whether that's leaning into new hobbies, leaning into relationships that do make you feel joyful or good, or you're like yourself, investing in yourself, investing in your life in a way that feels good, whether that's self-care or involving some other individuals. And again, it's that conscious choice, like, now I'm gonna do stuff for me, because if we're releasing, then we have space for that new life, for that new activity.
Yep. I like that idea. And I would add on, it can be really helpful to do something physical,
Yes.
like whether that's taking a walk or, exercising, or for me, like cleaning the house is an amazing palate cleanser for my brain. Like if I'm mad about something, if I can just take, an hour and clean, it's a
Mm.
physical thing. I got like podcasts or music in, like it just sort of like takes away the strength of that
Hmm.
feeling, and I'll be in a much, much better mood afterwards.
I love it. Great. Plus, and then you're going to have a cleaner house as well.
Yes, which always feels better.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have one on your list here that
Yes.
says emotional release.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is a really important one. You know, talking to a friend, talking to someone who doesn't have any part of the situation, getting an external perspective, or just someone that you can vent to.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the same thing of like putting the story to words. Like if you could just tell someone else and have them listen, you can feel understood,
Yeah.
and cry if that is what feels good. Like whatever it is, just like getting it out of your head,
Mm-hmm.
I think is so helpful to just kind of blow off the steam of it building in
Yeah.
there, and this pressure that builds up when it is contained like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Share your pain.
Yeah.
It'll become lighter.
Yeah.
One thing I believe about forgiveness is that it won't necessarily happen naturally. But if we want to forgive someone, we can choose to work on that, and we can choose to forgive them. So I don't know all of the steps that it will take, because every situation is different, and every pain is different, and every person is different. So I think there's different steps. But I do think if you decide you want to forgive this person, and you want to let go, and you want to forgive yourself, and you want to let go for whatever happened, then I think it's worth investing in that process, choosing, believing I can do it, because millions of people around the world forgive grievances, big and small, every single day, and they're all the lighter for it and happier for it. So if you decide this is something you want to do, then I think committing to it, and committing to finding the tools, resources, process to help you release and let go, I think is a great, great goal to set for yourself.
I agree.
I think I would just end with this, my final point here, which is, even if it can feel challenging to do so, even if it can feel like a journey to release something, forgive someone, there is a big gift in letting go. And the gift is you're creating space for something new. It's really letting go of the old, but you're creating space for something new. That's new life, new experiences, new surprises, and new opportunities.